Well, like I said, it'll be the heart of the classroom. My center, my station will be right there in the center. Like I said, you just need to make sure your classroom is just functional. Functional. So I keep going. My hands keep going in a circle because when I rotate my students, we have a order, a circle of where we go.
Okay, excellent.
Understandable, yeah.
So, it seems to me that when, like you said, you set up your classroom in a functional setting. Do you believe within that functional setting that everything that's put up, is it more like within the semester, you switch out information? I believe when I was a teacher, and it's just me saying my say on that as a teacher, especially with reading, it shouldn't be something that I'm just gonna throw up on the wall just to say it's up there. It needs to relate to what the students are going through at the time. So a lot of times I like to tell my teachers that when you're planning your classroom, especially for reading content, make sure that we're looking at the scope and sequence and seeing what we're covering for that time. And it's not so much putting it up ahead of time, but as we go through it, it's a learning museum for our students.
Exactly.
So whatever we're putting up in that classroom needs to relate to that. It's something that they can go back to and reference.
Yes, I agree 100% of what you're saying. Like I
Yes.
said, as far as the anchor charts and things that we make to help the students learning, we make that together. And of course, you have to stay along with the pacing guide of whatever the district or the curriculum has. for us. So yes, that's highly important. And then you have to, and like I said, teaching is animated. So if I have, like, for example, writing graffiti is a crime, I would just, I would,
And it is.
so I would just always make my body, known and present to go in that direction of that anchor chart. So that, and then also therefore I've learned and seen therefore when it's time when we change, have to take things down, the students, okay, graffiti, what did you say about graffiti? I just remember her walking, they'll look in the direction of where that anchor chart was or used to be.
Right.
Then that would probably trigger some type of memory for them.
Right.
And then also it's something that I usually do in my classroom, as I said, I enjoy functioning classroom, that just get a wire, not a wire, maybe just like a string and just hangers and just hang my anchor charts in a corner of a classroom. So therefore, if a student, I can't remember exactly what Ms. Cardone taught about graffiti, let me just go grab, out of the closet, grab some clothes, let me look and see.
Like that.
I'm sure your classroom would be much loved, and
Yes.
a lot of times our students need that compassion teacher. A lot of the students that we service here at Lincoln, they come from broken homes. A lot of them the parents are incarcerated. A lot of them are raising their other siblings. So we're not only those teachers and administration staff that's here for them, but we look at these kids as if they're our own.
Exactly.
So when you think about your classroom, you think of it more of your home and how you would want home to be for a child,
Yes.
especially with the needs that we're servicing here at Lincoln Middle School. That is awesome. Your ideas of how you want to put your classroom together, your ideas on reading period, I love it.
I think.
Excellent.
Very good. Brilliant.
Now, and I'm gonna take a twist,
Okay.
and I'm gonna ask you, because it seemed to me like you love everything and you're very into
Yes.
the classroom.
Yes.
So now, what do you find most frustrating about teaching?
Most frustrating about teaching. Let me think about that one. Well, you know what? I would just, if I just, it may sound cliche, but within the field and within the demographics of of the students that I'm teaching, I don't want to say frustrating. I would like to change that adjective to where it is just maybe challenging.
Okay.
Just, I think maybe deadlines, pacing guides, or something like that, I find that challenging. For example, if I know I have an assessment and the babies need to pass this assessment, by this date or whatnot, and they're not getting it, or just that pressure, that deadline, that's something I find challenging. Not really frustrating. The kids are who they are.
Yeah.
So I'm not really, concerned about that. And as far as parents are sending us their best.
Right.
So I can't say anything as far as the dynamic of the student, parent, teacher, I can't say anything that's frustrating, but I can just say things that are challenging. It's just the deadlines, the pacing guide. Sometimes where the district may have a skewed vision of like, okay, well, this child needs a little bit more time to understand this, and maybe a little bit more time to understand that. But according to the pacing guide to the district, that we need to move on. So I think that's something I find challenging.
Okay. And I understand that, because a lot of times as great teachers, you have those deadlines that you have to meet, but you also as yourself, you know what your students are needing. And sometimes that may refer to you going a little bit off schedule
Exactly.
to make sure that they're meeting those requirements and getting what they need in order to be successful. What I want to discuss with you now is the school's data. The data here, we're not where we need to be right now, of course. We're working on some things to get Lincoln Middle rolling to a better situation with the numbers. As of last year, our sixth graders, we were at 68% passing in reading. Seventh grade last year, we were at 79%. And eighth grade, we were at 73%, okay? Now, going into this year, I'll talk about what the district wanted us to have. As a district, we should have been at 75% passing in sixth grade reading. For seventh grade, we should have been at 83%. Eighth grade, we should have been at 75%. And I know numbers, a lot of teachers, data, okay, what's the need of it? Point is, I wanna get in there, I wanna be where the heart is, and I wanna teach kids. Numbers don't really mean much to me, but when we think about data is so important to everything that we do here on campus at Lincoln Middle School. It's the only way that we make the decisions that we need to make for kids. And without the numbers, we don't have a direction. And that's just me speaking as your campus principal. If you're chosen for the position, data is one of my highly things that I'm looking at. But I wanna also teach my teachers that we don't need to be afraid of data. Data is there to help us evaluate what we need to do for students. So if we know how to assess, if we know how to plan, if we know how to implement, and we know how to evaluate, then we can better provide the services needed for our students here at Lincoln Middle, okay? So with those numbers, the state only for sixth grade wanted us to be at 70%. But of course, the district wants us to be higher than what the goal is for the state. So we're aiming to get to those numbers. And I think with your expertise, that would really help us out. Do you have any further questions for us right now?
Well, just as far as it goes with data,
Yes.
how do you feel about are the teachers required here to keep data charts, anchor charts, and are the students held accountable? How are the students also held accountable as far as keeping track of their personal data?
Okay, that's a good question. One of the things we do at the beginning of the school year, we have our staff development for 2 weeks. Throughout one of those weeks, we have a session that's strictly data. For the most part, we try to make it as fun as possible.
Yeah.
But we talk about our subgroups, and we talk about how we can best fix those subgroups. The data that we look at is our TELPAS, because we have, like I said, a high Hispanic population here at Lincoln Middle School. We also look at our STAR data, and we look at our Lexile scores through SRA, okay? Now, those incoming sixth grade students are very important because we're looking at data coming from their elementary campus coming into the middle school campus. From that data, we analyze those numbers to determine which kids do we need to put in a reading lab, which kids can be in an AP course, which kids need to be in just a general population, okay? So, when we talk about data being important, is very important because that's how we place our students as well as know what type of instruction to plan. Now, you asked me something else with that. What was your other question?
Yes, how are the students, is there a platform or a strategy that you allow the students to be accountable and keep track of their data.
Right. When you think about empowering our teachers, we also empower our students here at Lincoln Middle School. And part of that empowerment is for the students to understand also why the data is important for them. When you think of yourself being as a teacher, I always tell my teachers to think of yourself as that physician. If you're the physician and I'm that client coming in to get the medical help that I need, then I'm also that teacher that's providing that help to my student. So I'm going to look at each student individually. And when I think about the numbers, I'm gonna also look at them individually according to what that student needs. So I'm gonna conference with that student. And this is where the data comes in and where it's important for that student to understand his or her areas of needs.
Yes.
So
True.
what they need to do in order to progress. Okay, so it's kind of like you're not giving them a diagnosis, but you also have this prescription plan of what needs to take place for that individual child. And in that way, we take that and we work together. Me as your building principal, Ms. Ellis as your reading specialist, and mom and dad. We all sit down and we work together and we look at these numbers and find out, for example, I'm just gonna throw a name in the air, Johnny, and we're gonna see what we need to do for Johnny. How can we best suit him here at Lincoln Middle School? So those are the things we look at, and when we think about tracking that data, for my teachers, I feel that is strongly important. It's highly encouraged that you track data. It's highly encouraged that every CBA that we take here at Lincoln Middle School, that we go back and we hold a PLC on that, and we talk about that within that platform. Because now, I have a group of kids in my group that may need some of what you can offer, and like you said, you work with your team. And part of working with your team is very great. And part of working with your team is understanding what is the needs of that team. So now that we've looked at this data and we've analyzed these numbers, now I'm gonna take this back with my team and we're gonna talk about, okay, well, Miss Angie, what worked best with you when you taught informational text? What were some of the things that you did? Because I'm looking at your data according to team data, and I see that your kids score higher in this area. So now it becomes a CDMC situation where the whole panel is a part of the data team now. So now we're looking at all that and we're putting it together as a community, and we're building the culture and the mission of Lincoln Middle School based on what we have and what we need to move forward to help our students better. So tracking is very important. Once you guys meet as a team, we talk about the numbers individually amongst your team, and then we talk about creating that way of how we're going to track the data for students. I believe, and when I was a teacher, I believe that when tracking that data, I had my students involved in that. Keeping a folder or portfolio that they can keep every semester to show. And a lot of times I did more of the color coding. Believe it or not, when you teach those pre-AP students, they like what I want to say. The competition.
No,
they like the competition
of
of
course.
And then when you,
right.
So one of the things I did in my classroom without putting names on that information, because of course we can't do that.
Right.
But what we can do is color code information, set it up by percentages, and then I did it by classrooms. And I would have